My fiancée rejected my proposal at our surprise party after hearing my mother insult her, until I made one cold move that left everyone in shock. Last year, I, 32 male, was in a very happy relationship with a woman named Sarah, 31 female. She and I had dated for 3 blissful years and had always discussed marriage to be our ultimate goal. We both were independent, had good jobs, and lived together. Sarah had always discussed that her childhood dream was to have a very romantic proposal and would drop hints that she wanted her sisters and parents to be there so they could capture her shocked expression at the time of the proposal. Hence, when I was promoted to district manager at work last year, I realized that I was earning more than enough now that I could propose to my girlfriend so we could eventually start a family together. We shared dreams and built a life together, and I couldn't imagine spending my days with anyone else. It was time to take the plunge, and what better way to do it than with an engagement party filled with love and laughter. I asked her parents for approval, and they were overjoyed with happiness to know that I was finally going to propose to their daughter. I consulted her sisters in buying the ultimate engagement ring, which was quite expensive, but I didn't mind as long as it would bring a smile to my fiancé's face. I had booked a grand venue to propose to Sarah, where I had invited all her close friends under the pretext that it was just a regular party so they wouldn't spill the beans to Sarah. I had flown my parents down for the engagement party, saying that we were celebrating my new position at work. I had worked for weeks with the party planner and caterer to ensure that Sarah would have the best surprise ever. The evening started off perfectly. The venue was adorned with twinkling lights, and the air buzzed with excitement. Friends and family gathered to celebrate what they thought was just a regular party. Little did they know, I had a shiny ring burning a hole in my pocket, ready to change our lives forever. As the night unfolded, everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Sarah was catching up with my family, chatting with friends, savoring the delicious food, and soaking in the festive atmosphere. Laughter and music filled the air, creating a joyous backdrop to the celebration. Amidst the lively chatter and celebration, I decided to call everyone's attention by clinking my glass. I felt a bit nervous as a hush fell over the crowd and all eyes turned toward me. At that moment, I couldn't help but steal a quick glance at Sarah, who was standing beside me with a radiant smile. Her eyes sparkled with excitement and anticipation, completely unaware of the surprise that awaited her. The room was charged with electrical energy as I took a deep breath, ready to embark on the life-altering moment. I began to speak, expressing my gratitude for everyone who had gathered to share in our joy. I recounted the beautiful journey Sarah and I had shared, the highs and lows that had only strengthened our bond. The love and support from our friends and family had been the bedrock of our relationship, and I wanted to celebrate that love in the grandest way possible. However, as I began to lower myself to one knee and extend the ring, a sudden shift in the atmosphere became palpable. Sarah's smile slowly faded, and a shadow of uncertainty clouded her eyes. The room fell silent, and the joyous cheers that had filled the air moments ago now hung heavy with tension. With a heavy heart, Sarah hesitated before uttering the words that shattered the joyous atmosphere. "I can't." A stunned silence enveloped the room, broken only by the distant sounds of music and laughter from neighboring tables. It felt as though time itself had come to a standstill. The air grew thick with an awkward discomfort as the weight of those 2 words lingered, threatening to unravel the carefully orchestrated moment. I remained on one knee, the ring extended in hopeful anticipation, but the answer had already spoken. The celebratory ambiance had transformed into an emotionally charged scene of disappointment and disbelief. Trying to mask the vulnerability and pain, I managed a weak smile. "Is this a joke?" I stammered, my voice barely audible above the hushed whispers that spread through the room. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears, and she shook her head. "I can't marry you." The room, once filled with jubilation, now echoed with an awkward and painful silence. The festive atmosphere had abruptly shifted into a somber reality, leaving me grappling with the unexpected rejection of what was meant to be a joyous occasion. I got up awkwardly, holding my knees, and looked around. Her parents looked devastated, and there was confusion etched on her sisters' faces. I looked back at Sarah as tears silently flowed down her cheeks. Sensing something was wrong, I gestured for her to walk outside with me so that we could talk, hoping it was just the overwhelming emotions of the moment. Guests started to speak in hushed tones as I led Sarah outside. My mind raced as I couldn't fathom why she would reject my proposal when she had always wanted to marry me. When we reached a quiet corner of the venue, I asked her if I had done something wrong. "Sarah, what's going on? Please tell me if I've done something to you," I pleaded, desperation and confusion lacing my voice. The cool night air did little to soothe the heat of the rejection that lingered between us. She avoided eye contact, her gaze fixed on the ground as if searching for the right words. The silence stretched uncomfortably before she finally spoke, her voice cold and detached. "It's not about you doing something wrong. It's about us, about me." My heart sank as I struggled to comprehend what she was saying. "About us? Sarah, we've been together for so long. I planned out this grand event so I could give you your dream proposal. I talked with your parents and coordinated with your sisters so you could have an unforgettable night. I thought you would like this, but is this why you're rejecting me?" I asked, my voice shaking. Sarah shook her head, saying that she had loved the way I had set up this entire thing and this wasn't why she was rejecting me. I kept begging her to tell me what was going on. She looked at me with a hardness I had never seen before. "You're not the person I thought you were. I can't go through with this. I can't marry you," she said, her words cutting through the night like a sharp knife. Confusion and hurt clouded my eyes as I tried to make sense of her sudden change of heart. "What are you talking about? We were fine until just a few moments ago. Please don't do this," I begged, my voice breaking. She continued, her tone growing colder with each word. "You're just not the man I envisioned spending my life with. Your flaws are too glaring, and I can't ignore them any longer. I thought I could, but tonight made me realize I can't. You're not ambitious enough. You're too complacent. And frankly, I've outgrown you," she said, her words stinging like a relentless barrage. I pleaded with her to elaborate, to give me a chance to understand and address her concerns, but she brushed off my pleas with a dismissive wave. "It's not worth explaining. We're done, and it's better this way. You need to grow up and figure things out on your own," she declared, her words leaving me feeling utterly defeated and betrayed. I was completely blindsided. The woman I thought was my future had just dismantled our dreams with a few callous sentences. The joyous occasion had turned into a nightmare, and I couldn't fathom what had gone wrong. Sarah refused to provide any more details and walked away from me. Devastated and confused, I decided to respect her wishes and give her the space she needed. I walked back into the party. My parents, seeing my red puffy face, came running to me in concern. Sarah's parents also looked upset and asked me what happened, but I shook my head, telling them that I had no idea. I tried to muster a weak smile in front of the other guests, attempting to hide the pain beneath the surface. The atmosphere in the party had shifted dramatically. The once lively celebration now felt like a somber gathering. Guests, feeling the heaviness in the air, began to leave one by one. My parents hovered nearby, offering silent support, but I couldn't bring myself to share the painful details just yet. The party that began with such promise ended in a haze of confusion and heartache. In the following days, Sarah sent her sisters to move her things out. She didn't want to face me. I tried reaching out to her repeatedly, hoping for some clarity, but my calls and messages went unanswered. It felt like she had vanished from my life without a trace. In the days that followed, I felt like I was stumbling through a dark tunnel of heartbreak. I asked her sisters and family many times if they had any idea about her decision, but they seemed to be as confused as I was. No matter how many times I tried to reach out to Sarah, the silence on the other end felt like a heavy weight on my chest. It was like she had vanished from my life, leaving me with unanswered questions and a sense of deep loss. Every night, I replayed the events of that night, desperately searching for any sign that could explain why everything fell apart. The ring, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now sat heavily in my pocket, a constant reminder of what could have been. The lack of closure gnawed at my mind. What went wrong? Was it something I said or didn't say? The future we once talked about now seemed like a distant, faded dream. Unable to cope with the heartbreak anymore, and seeing that she never reached out to me despite how many times I tried, I made the difficult decision to cut off all contact with Sarah. Closure didn't come from her, so I accepted that and moved forward. I immersed myself in work and surrounded myself with friends who could help me heal. It was a painful process, and every day felt like an eternity without her. Throughout all this, my mother refused to leave my side. She stayed with me for weeks, cooking for me and taking care of me because I had no energy to do anything. My mother would console me and encourage me to move on from Sarah. She would constantly tell me how I deserved to be treated better than this. My mother only decided to fly back home after I promised her that I would not skip any more meals or spend any more weekends lying in bed crying for Sarah. For the most part, I kept this promise. Fast forward a year later, things have changed for the better. Even though my heart still hurts, I am in a better place mentally. I've been on a few dates, but it hasn't been easy. The way Sarah broke up with me and disappeared left me with trust and abandonment issues. The wounds are healing, but I'm still scared of getting hurt again. To cope, I focus on my work and lean on my friends for support. They have been there for me whenever I have felt lonely or down. Yesterday was my weekend, and I was home all day playing video games when suddenly the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was a bit unusual for someone to drop by unannounced. Curiosity piqued, I made my way to the door. As I opened it, I was met with a sight I never thought I would see again: Sarah standing on my doorstep. Time seemed to freeze for a moment as we locked eyes, both of us unsure of what to say or do next. My initial shock turned into a mix of confusion and surprise. Sarah, on the other hand, smiled at me sheepishly. After a brief moment of awkward silence, I mustered the courage to speak. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, taking a deep breath before saying, "Can we talk?" she requested, her voice soft and unsure. I was unsure how to react, so I stepped aside, allowing her to enter. We moved to the living room, and the atmosphere was thick with unresolved tension. As we sat down, the memories of our last conversation flooded back, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of vulnerability. "So, what brings you here after all this time?" I inquired, my emotions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Sarah took a deep breath before beginning to speak. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized I made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have let things end the way they did." I looked at her skeptically, with my brows furrowed, and asked her why she would say something like this out of the blue when she had left me last year without ever giving me any reason. Sarah told me that she had regretted what she had done ever since the night of the engagement. I listened, still processing her unexpected presence. The weight of the past year and the pain I had endured made it difficult to trust her words completely. "What happened that night exactly for you to end our relationship so suddenly?" I questioned, searching for sincerity in her eyes. As Sarah recounted the events of that crucial evening, she shared the excitement and anticipation she felt leading up to the proposal. Her suspicion had grown when her sister insisted on getting her nails done, hinting at the possibility of a proposal. Despite the nerves, she eagerly awaited the moment that would change our lives. During the event, surrounded by friends and family, she found herself in high spirits. However, a trip to the washroom took an unexpected turn. While freshening up, she inadvertently overheard my mother engaged in a phone conversation. To her dismay, the words my mother shared cut deep. My mother expressed disbelief that her son would marry someone like Sarah. Sarah froze upon hearing this, grappling with the shock of such hurtful remarks. The woman she admired and expected to welcome her into the family was seemingly disparaging her character. To make matters worse, my mother went on to say how Rachel would have been a much more suitable match for me instead. At this point, my mother must have noticed that Sarah had overheard the conversation, and she hurriedly ended the call. Sarah then confronted her about the hurtful words she had spoken. My mother initially hesitated, offering vague responses to avoid delving into the uncomfortable situation. However, Sarah, persistent in seeking an explanation, continued to press for clarity. Faced with the need for a direct response, my mother finally chose to open up exactly how she felt about her. With a stern demeanor, she told Sarah that she didn't want her to become her daughter-in-law, as she had always dreamt of Rachel becoming my wife. Sarah asked her angrily what she meant by this and who Rachel was. Just for context, Rachel was the daughter of my mother's best friend, a woman who had become practically an extension of my mother. They had always dreamed of our union, seeing it as a fairy tale continuation of their own close bond. We were childhood friends, often thrown together at family gatherings and joint vacations. As we grew older, the pressure escalated. My mother subtly arranged meetings, leaving us alone in hopes of sparks flying. When I finally succumbed during my college years and asked Rachel out, she was ecstatic. We dated for just a few months, but the relationship quickly turned sour. Rachel, initially charming and attentive, revealed her true colors. She was extremely possessive, controlling, and manipulative. She dictated who I could spend time with, monitored my phone calls, and became jealous of any female interactions I had. The constant criticism and suffocating control wore me down, and I eventually broke up with her. My mother, instead of supporting me, tried to get me back together with her. Over the years, she remained fixated on Rachel and would never miss an opportunity to remind me of our compatibility, conveniently forgetting the tumultuous nature of our past. She'd casually mention Rachel's achievements, lamenting the fact that I had let such a good woman go. My mother and her best friend continued to push me to forgive Rachel, which is why I started looking for a job in another city. I wanted to move away. When I met Sarah 3 years ago, I told my mother firmly that she would never mention anything about Rachel to me or Sarah ever again. What Rachel had done to me was extremely traumatizing, and I wanted to start afresh with Sarah. I lived in a different city, so my mother seldom met Sarah. Hence, I thought this Rachel chapter would never come up in my life again. I thought my mother knew and supported how happy I was with Sarah all these years. On that night, my mother told Sarah about my past with Rachel and how she had always wanted me to end up with Rachel instead of someone like Sarah. My mother went on to say how Rachel was my one big true love, so I would never be completely happy with Sarah. This deeply hurt Sarah, understandably, and she started to question if she was making the right decision to marry me. The revelation that she might be viewed as a second choice, forever in the shadow of a previous love, left her questioning the foundations of our relationship. The revelation by my mother cast a shadow over what should have been a joyous occasion, leaving Sarah confused and wounded. As she recounted this painful episode, I could sense the emotional turmoil she experienced that night. The clarity of her narrative, combined with the raw vulnerability in her eyes, made it evident that she had carried the weight of this secret for far too long. My mind struggled to comprehend this revelation. I couldn't fathom why my mother would say anything so negative about me, especially on such an important occasion. The news hit me like a sudden storm, stirring up a whirlwind of emotions. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears as she spoke, expressing regret and insisting that because of the disgusting things my mother told her that night, she decided to abruptly end our relationship when I proposed to her. She was afraid that if she told me what my mother had said, I would say the same things, and she didn't want to be more heartbroken. She continued, saying how in the past year she had gone to therapy, where she had slowly come to realize that she had made a huge mistake in letting me go. She started pleading with me for a chance to make things right and began asking for my forgiveness. As I sat there absorbing her words, I couldn't ignore the internal conflict. The wounds from the past were still fresh, and the idea that my mother might have played a role in our breakup added another layer of complexity to the situation. I did not know what to say to Sarah, and I needed some time to think. I told her that I couldn't make any decisions at the moment, as I was extremely shocked by what she had revealed to me. I asked her to give me some space. Before leaving, Sarah assured me that she would do anything to be with me again and pleaded earnestly that I should give us a second chance. As I sit here writing this on Reddit, I'm still grappling with the shocking truth. The question looms large. Could we rebuild what was broken, or is the damage irreparable? Will I be in a hole for not giving her a second chance, or should I consider giving our love another try despite the hurtful actions of both her and my own mother? I did call my mother and had a conversation with her regarding this. The conversation was tense from the beginning. I asked her straightforwardly about what she said to Sarah that night. My mother seemed surprised that I was even bringing up Sarah after all this time and asked me if something had happened. I told her how Sarah had come to my doorstep asking for forgiveness. My mother angrily told me that I shouldn't have let her inside the house, but I stopped her mid-sentence and asked her to tell me exactly what she had told Sarah during the event. At first, my mother tried to downplay it, saying she didn't say anything much and that I should not believe Sarah. However, I pressed her for the truth, telling her I needed to know what had transpired, otherwise I could never trust her again. As I insisted, my mother's demeanor shifted. She became defensive, insisting that I shouldn't waste my time with useless women like Sarah. She told me how Sarah just wanted to come between us, and that I should not even think twice about what Sarah had told me. I was losing my patience at this point, so I asked her directly if she had really mentioned Rachel to Sarah. Hearing this, my mother scoffed and retorted that it wasn't her fault that Sarah was eavesdropping on her conversation in the washroom, and it was Sarah who forced her to talk about Rachel. Taking a deep breath, I asked my mother if she really believed what she had told Sarah that night. My mother then went on to say that she knew from the bottom of her heart that Rachel and I belonged together. She continued saying how I was wasting time with other women when I could be with someone like Rachel. According to her, Rachel was perfect for me, and I should end up with her. Her words were like a dagger, reopening wounds from the past. I couldn't contain my anger. I raised my voice, telling my mother that what she had done was unforgivable. I angrily yelled that she could have mentioned my past with Rachel to Sarah without putting Sarah down and that I was done with her interference in my life. I reminded her that it was my life, my choices, and she had no right to dictate who I should be with. The conversation ended with me making it clear that I was going to cut things off with her for now. My mother burst out crying, shouting how evil Sarah was and that this was why she always hated her. I cut off the call and blocked her as I was done with her manipulation. It was a heartbreaking moment, realizing that the person I should have been able to rely on had played a role in sabotaging my relationship. Since then, my dad has tried to call me to ask what happened, but I've let him know that I will talk to him when I'm ready. To be very honest, I'm not just angry at my mother, I'm also angry at Sarah for ending our relationship abruptly, without ever giving me a chance to explain anything. I admit that it was my fault for not giving her a heads up about Rachel before, but I never thought Sarah would leave me for something my mother said about my past, without at least verifying things with me. I'm still undecided about how to have this conversation with Sarah, as I don't want to face her again. Seeing her brings up all the pain and heartbreak I faced last year, and I don't know if I have the strength to face it all over again. As many of you suggested, I decided to send an email to Sarah instead of meeting her again. I think sending her an email was the best approach, as it allowed me to communicate my thoughts in a more composed and collected manner. Here's a copy of what I wrote to her. Hi, Sarah. I've had some time to process our conversation, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you. Firstly, I appreciate your honesty and the courage it took to revisit the events of that night. I can only imagine how challenging it must have been for you to come forward with the truth. Learning about the conversation between you and my mother was a shock, to say the least. I never anticipated that she would interfere in such a personal and significant moment in our lives. It's disheartening to hear that her words may have played a role in the abrupt end of our relationship. I had explicitly communicated with her about not involving Rachel in our lives, and I am deeply disappointed that she disregarded my wishes. I have confronted her regarding this and made it abundantly clear to her that what she did to you was unforgivable. However, your decision to end our relationship without seeking clarification from me was painful, and it left me with unanswered questions. I understand the hurt you must have felt upon hearing those words from my mother, and I empathize with the confusion it may have caused. However, I wish you had given me an opportunity to address the situation and provide my perspective. I appreciate your willingness to make amends, but I've come to the difficult realization that we can't be together. I understand your regret and the steps you've taken to seek therapy, but I need to prioritize my own healing and well-being. I hope you can respect my decision and the need for some distance. I wish you all the best in your journey, and I hope you find the happiness you deserve. Take care. I haven't received a reply from Sarah since I sent her this email, and I am completely fine with it. I don't want to keep the door open for further discussion. I will give an update if Sarah replies to my email. She wrote about how sad she was to receive my email, as she thought I would eventually forgive her for the events of the last year. She acknowledged the validity of my feelings and the difficulty of the situation. In her email, Sarah expressed regret for the abrupt ending of our relationship and the subsequent silence that followed. She admitted that she should have confronted me that night instead of ending things so suddenly. She wrote about how she would always regret letting me go and that I would always be the one for her. Reading her reply left me with a feeling of nostalgia. I had loved Sarah so much and thought that we would be spending our lives together, but alas, life had taken an unexpected turn. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I am determined to focus on my own growth and well-being moving forward.